What's up, Hockey Talk Show fans? It's your old pal Ant back for another live Hockey Talk Show. Facebook and YouTube, thanks for being here. Of course, whether you watch on the stream live or not live on Facebook or YouTube, or you're on the podcast, wherever you're joining us from and however you're joining us, thanks for joining us. On this episode of the Hockey Talk Show, Vegas is exempt. We're going to get into that. There's almost 3 billboards outside of the National Hockey League. And who's going to be the next general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes? We tackle all that. And of course, the title of this episode, which is the Chicago Blackhawks. Now what? It's the Hockey Talk Show. Buddies, Hockey Talk Show. How's everybody doing out there in Hockey Talk Show land? It's your old pal Ant. Nice to be here with you. Welcome into the chat show. Aaron's here already in the YouTube. Trade time for the Blackhawks. Aaron, I agree, my friend. We are going to tackle that and a whole heck of a lot more here on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. Comments definitely welcome. Facebook and YouTube. Of course, you can find us on Twitter at Hockey Talk Show. That's at Hockey Talk Show. And however you want to communicate is more than fine with us right here on the Hockey Talk Show. HockeyTalkShow.com, of course. We're going to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks, definitely, in a major way, because there's a lot to... This is a big... That Blackhawks, that's a big steak to eat. That's a big old steak to eat. There's a lot to be delved into there. Wold Wolf, Blackhawks, more like Black Sucks. Ouch. Ouch. I do love wordplay jokes, though. It doesn't matter what the topic is. I do love a solidly planned out wordplay joke. There's nothing better. There's nothing better than a good wordplay joke. Black Sucks. It's not the greatest thing I've ever heard, but I like it. I like it. It's good enough for me on a Wednesday night. Nor'easter here in the States. Of course, in the Long Island area, we're getting pounded right now. It is 8:02 p.m. Eastern. I'd like to throw that out there for the podcasters, so whenever they're catching up and listening, or if you're watching the replay version of the show, you have some semblance of an idea of what's going on at the time of the broadcast of the show here. There's so much to get into with these Blackhawks, and we're going to spend a good amount of time on that, but I do want to get into some of the other topics of the day today here, and there is a lot. Let's start with the general manager meetings, because that was a pretty significant move that doesn't necessarily get a lot of coverage here in the States. I mean, I know in Canada they obsess over it because they obsess over everything. That's why I love Canada. That's why I love Canada. Blackhawks are a joke now. Blackhawks are the joke now. But the Vegas Golden Knights, this is a big... All right, by the way, let's start here. Let's start here with the general manager meetings. For those of you who don't know, if you're unaware, the GM meetings are essentially how the game is formed. Everybody thinks that Gary Bettman is the boss of the National Hockey League, and although he is the commissioner, and that is somewhat true, he's not the boss. The boss is the 30, now 31, and soon to be 32 general managers. Those are the guys who run everything. Everything is run to the general managers. There's a board of governors, and they'll vote and they'll put things in play. But usually that's an owner or an owner delegated person. Sometimes it's the president of the team. Sometimes it is the actual general manager, who's also the governor. There's multiple governors, by the way. This is very like league, but sometimes it's kind of fun to get inside baseball. There's multiple governors. When I was with the Islanders, I think there was 3 or 4. Most notably, it was the owner, it was Charles Wong at the time. But I know there was a couple other people, and depending on what the topic of the meeting was, for instance, there's financial meetings and things of that nature that ownership sometimes doesn't really want to be a part of because that's the boring, nerdy stuff and not the cool hockey fun stuff. So they'll send a certain governor for that, usually their CFO or their finance person or whoever it is, so they can be a governor in that scenario. I want to thank everybody over at NHL Red Light Hockey. We're in the page again tonight doing the live show with them. So if you're joining us from there, give a thumbs up on this video, hit the share button. Let us know what's up. We're going to talk Blackhawks, who I think the new GM is going to be for the Carolina Hurricanes. I think this has already been decided, by the way. And almost 3 billboards outside of the National Hockey League. And then whatever topic you guys want to talk about in the chat below, you guys let me know. But back to the governors. So essentially how the rules of the game are made and what gets decided all starts from these general manager meetings. And they have several throughout the course of the year. They just wrapped up their one that's annually done down in Florida. And you're thinking, why Florida? Because it's nice weather and these guys get to meet for a little while and then they get to go to the beach. Not a bad life being a general manager of a National Hockey League team, let me tell you. And then they'll do it again around, the All-Star game. There could be a meeting, usually during the Stanley Cup Finals at some point, or I should say during the playoffs, there's a meeting there. Then there's an off-season meeting. So a couple times a year, they'll get together and they'll talk about some of the rules of the game and some of the things that are going on. Right now, goalie interference is a big part of the discussion, and I can't tell you how boring that is to me. I have no issues with the goalie interference topic. To touch on this quickly here, there's been a lot of talk about it, especially up north of the border in Canada. I got to tell you, I could not care less. I really just don't even care. I just don't even care. Look, calls are going to go against you. Calls are going to go for you. It happens. I like that they're trying to make the game a little bit better as far as the goalie interference stuff. But I mean, a goalie's either interfered with or he's not, and it's the person's opinion or it's not. So most of us aren't going to really notice much of a change, but there is going to be a vote from the Board of Governors based on the meetings with the general managers on how this is evaluated, and that is going to change. So right now they tried to keep all the power with the referees, and they're going to slightly alter and change that moving forward, where they're going to have a retired NHL referee in the room and hockey ops up in Toronto, a small, consistent group of people, not the same person every night, but a small, consistent group of people are going to be reviewing the calls, and it's going to be their call. The way it stood right now, Toronto hockey ops, whomever it was there to show angles to the refs and discuss with the refs and be there for the referees. And the referees were going to make a call. They have now switched that, and it's going to be done in Toronto with a retired. The National Hockey League employs several retired referees for different things dealing with the referees. And so now part of their responsibility moving forward is going to be sitting in this room and waiting to get these reviews done. So ultimately, the coverage is going to be up to the person in that room. And by person, I mean people, meaning it's hockey ops this one, it's that one, it's whatever. Gregory, as a goalie, I think the NHL is a joke with the goalie interference. Bring back the no foot in the crease rule. I've heard a lot of people say that, and I got to tell you something, man. If you're, and I wish we had my man Dustin in on this one because he's a huge Dallas Stars fan. If you're a Dallas Stars fan, you do not want to hear that goalie crease that was nightmarish. It was nonsensical at times. I'm okay with bringing it back as long as it makes sense. I think it makes sense. As we saw in the Dallas Stars Stanley Cup final, having your skate in the crease without any sort of contact with the goaltender, calling that a non-goal, I never liked it. I just never liked it. And besides, and here's the problem, and here's why I don't think the National Hockey League ever goes back with that. Scoring is up. Crashing the net, it's not good for the goalies or the goaltender union. They hate it. I get what you're saying, Greg. Greg's the goalie. He hates it. Goalies are going to hate it. But it's better for the game because more scoring. More scoring is better for the game. You get into the net more scoring equals better for the game. It's just kind of the way it is. Now, goalie injuries are definitely something to be worried about. And I think that perhaps we can penalize players a little bit more harder if they get in contact with the goaltender. Perhaps maybe the move is there's a higher penalty threshold for that. Maybe it's a double minor, whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas around right now. But, you know, you got to find a way to kind of live in both worlds. I just don't know about the foot in the crease rule. I never liked it then. You could have a great hockey goal. Guy's got his foot in the back end of the crease, not touching the goaltender, and suddenly it's a no goal. Now, if you remember, they shaved off the side of the crease. That kind of helped a little bit, but there's still a lot up in the front there, and I don't know. I just don't like it. I think it's got to make sense. I think it's just got to make sense from a hockey standpoint. Either a goaltender was interfered with in making a save or he wasn't. And I also think that where a lot of the times these hockey ops guys get this stuff wrong is a lot of the times it's the goalie's teammate that pushes a player into the goaltender. Like, to me, that's going to be the next argument that we're not talking about enough right now, because that happens more often than not. You're like, oh, so-and-so, of course, he couldn't make the save. Yeah, but his teammate was pushing the opposing player into him. That's why he couldn't make the save. Louis over at Vegas Golden Knights want to welcome him in. Hockey for Life, Sports Talk with Broads. Welcome, guys. Good to see you in here on the Hockey Talk Show. Great YouTube community that's started up by our pal Louis over there with the Vegas Golden Knights coverage. He's got a great channel. He's in the chat right now. Click on his name and follow him if you can. And Broads and Hockey for Life, these guys are all doing some really fun stuff on their channels. Not exactly like the Hockey Talk Show here, where we kind of cover a little bit of everything. They're doing some, you know, pinpoint stuff, like Lou does Vegas, and Broads, I think, does the Flyers, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But I was checking out some of their stuff, and it's really, really good. It's really, really good. Gregory, I'm just saying that the goalies are better protected outside the crease than in. It's not a bad point, Greg. That was very well said. That is not a bad point whatsoever. When they pop around out, yeah, that's not a bad point. That's very, very true. That's very true. I think you got to protect the goaltenders. Like I said, if you want to talk about a higher, because concussion rates amongst goaltenders, and I don't know if there's really studies for this to back it up, but I feel like Carey Price, who else? Corey Crawford, I think it was a concussion. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to keep track of injuries. I don't know. But I feel like we've seen a number of concussions from goaltenders. Matt Murray, right? There's been a few. So I would like to definitely see that. You want teams to crash the net, but there's got to be some respect for the goaltender. Me personally, I would weigh on the side if there's any sort of contact, any sort of prohibitive contact from making a save. I would probably lean on that. So, I mean, again, the officials can control this, and now it's going to be the guys up in Toronto. They're the ones who are going to set the tone. Greg, at the end of the day, there's more goals this year because number one goalies are on the IR. That's also a good point. Greg, you might be our resident goalie expert here. You're making good points, my man. That is a really good point. But I think it's going to be not something fixed with a written rule. I think it's going to be fixed in that room with the referees and the former NHL retired referee who now works for the league, whomever that is, that are going to be the ones to do it. Because believe me, if guys are going to the net and they're getting called for goalie interference, they're going to be a hell of a lot more careful. It's like any other infraction in the National Hockey League, right? Sticks up around the gloves were an issue. We've seen a lot less hand injuries this year, right? They called it a lot more, like insanely in the preseason. They laxed off it a little bit, but still they made their point, and now people aren't throwing. They're still, I mean, it still happens, but not as often. So it's going to be something that is controlled not through a rule change, but yet a culture change in how the rules are interpreted. Regardless of goalies gets hurt, that can be the difference between making the playoffs and missing them. It's not like missing one forward that is more easily to make some. I get what you're saying. Yeah, the goaltender position is obviously a more important position. We got to protect the goaltenders. I get that. But at the end of the day, scoring equals more fans equals more dollars equals happy general managers and owners and everything else like that. So that is like, we're here for great reasons, and the league is a lot of fun, but the league is a moneymaker, and scoring makes money. That's, at the end of the day, that's the truth. I mean, it may not be how you feel, it may not be how I feel necessarily, but that's the truth of the matter. That's just the way it is. So we definitely have, I'm not all that excited about, and I'm excited to talk about it this way. I love talking about what's goalie interference and everything like that, but how the league comes about it was so boring to me. And I have no interest in, great. Like, if you want to leave it in the ref's hands, great. Now they want to put it in the retired NHL referee's hands and the guys in Toronto, great. I could care less. It's still going to come down to the end of the day. I'm going to see it one way and you're going to see it another. In fact, during the general manager meetings, this just now, a couple days ago, yesterday, in fact, I think, they invited the media in. This was a great move by, I think I got to give credit to Bettman. I'm not 100% sure he came up with it, but I believe he did. He invited the media in. They showed a couple of the goalie interference plays from this season, and they let the media vote on it. Was this interference? Was this not interference? And the room was split, so it depends. It really, really depends. You're never going to get those calls right. They're just never going to be right. They're not as clean and black and white as offsides. Was a skate up or was a skate down? Which, by the way, I think they're leaving that alone. They're not picking on the offsides thing. That's going to stay basically the way it is. So if you're a fan of that or not, again, it depends on whether or not it helps your cause. And that makes a difference. I never like the skate in the crease rule either. A lot of gray areas on goalie interference. Alan, thanks for the comment. It's true. There's a lot of gray areas. Oddly enough, I would prefer the gray areas though over that skate in the crease rule. I just never liked that. Go back to that Dallas Buffalo series, man. That was a crummy way to end that series. That was an awfully crummy way to end that series. That was not good for the league. And that's why I don't think they'll ever go back to that. The other interesting thing that I think came out of the meeting, and this goes, glad we got Louis here, Vegas will be exempt from the Seattle hockey expansion draft. Curious to get your opinions on that. Let me know in the comments below right now. Thumbs up, is that good? Boo, if that's bad. Would love to know what you think about that one. Interestingly enough, for those of you who are just joining us, I know we're getting new fans all the time. I do a morning show on a radio station on Long Island. We are doing a promotion over there. This has nothing to do with the Hockey Talk Show, but I feel like if I can push you guys in that direction, it's great. They're giving away an autographed John Tavares puck. They're also giving away tickets to the Islander game this Saturday. I put a link in the description below on Facebook and YouTube. Actually, it's on YouTube. Sorry, you gotta go to YouTube if you're on Facebook right now. If you want to enter to win for that, you can definitely do that. The address is in the YouTube description below. So if you want to enter to win an autographed John Tavares jersey, you can enter there. And then if you want to try and win the Islander tickets, you got to be here in the New York area. They're not going to fly you anywhere. It's just tickets. That's at WEHM.com, the radio station I work for's website. Adam says, stupid. Stupid that they are exempt. So Adam doesn't like the exemption. I'm game, Adam. Why? Why don't you think? Louis, I think it's fair because my channel is strictly Vegas, where I can be biased as I want. So I will be. It's the best thing the NHL could have decided. Vegas players matter. Here's what I find interesting about this. And if I was a fan of Vegas, I mean, if fans of Vegas are not going to really matter, but the team itself, this is what I found to be pretty interesting. They're exempt, but I almost wouldn't want to be. And I'll tell you why. And by the way, this seems they are a functioning team already. They would be okay if they were involved. And that makes a good point. They've had a draft. They've had a amateur draft. They've had an off season. They've signed players. Originally, I would disagree with you, Adam, where I would say they're not as stocked up as other teams are, who have had years and years and years and years of drafts. So it's kind of unfair from that standpoint. But I understand where you're coming from in saying that, yeah, it should be. Vegas should pay something, not a player, but maybe a third-round draft pick from Daniel. That's an interesting move. I never thought of that. But here's where this gets really interesting. And again, sort of the business side of the league here. Vegas is exempt. They do not have to expose players in the expansion draft for Seattle. But they also don't get any of Seattle's expansion fees. Now, what do you think of that? Now, how do you feel about that? Because I'll tell you, and this is really interesting, part of the Golden Knights coming into the league before Seattle was the reality that it is today. Bill Foley agreed as part of his expansion contract that he will not take part in an expansion process with a 30-second franchise. Now, this is all we know. I don't know if this counts for 32nd, 33rd, 34th. I don't know. Maybe it's just 32nd. That would make the most sense to me. But he doesn't have to expose a player, but he's also not welcome to the money, which means that the $650 million that Seattle is coughing up to get into the league gets chopped 30 ways and not 31. What does that mean for the original 30? They get to eat a little bit more than Vegas does. I mean, come on. This is crazy. So all the teams just split up $16.67 million of Bill Foley's money. Now Seattle is coming in, and each of those 30 teams get another $21.67 million. Not Vegas, though. Only the original 30. The original 30 really sold a bag of goods to Bill Foley. Now, he's happier than a pig in poop because, you know, he's got his team. They're doing great. There's no better than him. But it would be awfully nice after paying $500 million to get $16-17 million back in return. That would have been nice. If you're Bill Foley, you're probably like, oh, what did I do? I messed this up. Because Bill Foley doesn't care. You can give away your 8th best player on the Vegas Golden Knights for $18 million. I think it'd be all right. I think it would be just fine. I actually don't know what the real number would come down to, but I'm sure it would be fine. I'm sure it's in that $16 to $18 million range. I'm going to take a look at the Vegas Golden Knights roster right now, really quickly here, and take a look at it and see who we would lose if you were Vegas. See if this is worth it. All right, let's see. Going by points only. Let's go by points only. Marchessault has 67. Carlson, Perron, Smith, Holla, Neal at 6, Colin Miller at 7, Nate Schmidt at 8. You get to protect how many? 8 or 9? I think 9? Let's say we get to protect 9. So you could protect, then you'd have to protect Fleury at least. And if you wanted to trade Schmidt for Subban, all right, whatever. But you're talking about losing Alex Tuck or a Cody Eakin or Shea Theodore. All right, you would lose somebody significant. You could lose a Shea Theodore in there. Or an Eric Holla. I don't know. That would be rough. I would still like to have $16 million. $17 million, especially if I just paid $500 million. But you know what? Bill Foley doesn't think like me. $16 million might not be worth him whatsoever. Theodore would hurt. Spiza would not, obviously. Let me see here. I want to get into the Blackhawks bit. So that's an interesting thing I found out today from the NHL general managers meeting, that Vegas doesn't have to participate in the expansion draft, but they also don't get a check for $21 million, which all the original teams do, which is not all that bad. Figuring that the original teams, $38 million in expansion fees these last couple of years, and that goes into the pockets of the owners. They do not have, that is not hockey related revenue. They do not have to share that with the players. If it's hockey related revenue, jerseys, tickets, whatever, that gets split amongst the NHLPA and the NHL. This does not. This absolutely does not. So they get to keep this. That's their money. That's unbelievable. To make $38 million. Just look at this from the standpoint of Tom Dundon. No, actually not him. Who would work? The Islanders, actually. Jonathan Ledecky and Scott Malkin have come into the league and have already accepted a check for $60 million, and they're going to get a check for 21. They're going to get $38 million in their first couple of years of owning the Islanders. It's a good time. It's a good time to be an owner in the National Hockey League. Let me see. Tavares to the Knights. You heard it here first. Not impossible. Would solidify their middle, right? Give them a good first line center. Push Carlson back to the second line. That would be something. That would be something. We are still, and I know I'm getting pounded by the Islander fans. We are still waiting on doing this John Tavares, Garth Snow Islander thing. But before we get to Chicago Blackhawks, let's talk about it, because at first, the first billboard we had in the National Hockey League this year was this bad guy right here. Snow must go, paid for by Long Island hockey fans. That was put up in Brooklyn, just a few blocks away from the Barclays Center. Now we got a new billboard in the National Hockey League. That's why I say almost 3 billboards outside the NHL. Look at what fans in Ottawa have done. Melnick out, paid for by the fans. Melnickout.ca. They have started their own billboard campaign. And by the way, I think they bought a bunch more than what the Islanders fans bought. Islander fans bought 2. I think they're way higher than that in Ottawa right now. But Ottawa fans trying to get Eugene Melnick out. And I don't know if they're going to be all that successful. It's a lot easier to get a general manager fired than it is to get an owner to sell a team. I mean, let's be honest. He's not selling the team. He's not going to sell the team. But the frustration amongst Ottawa fans is palpable. When they start, putting into their pockets, going into their pockets to spend money, not on your team, not filling up your building, but buying billboards just to tell everybody in the world how much they hate you, creating hashtags and everything else. I mean, that really says something. Von Hook, I hate Melnick. Von Hook, you're not alone, my friend. You are not alone, buddy. Hopefully you guys are subscribed. If you're watching us for the first time, make sure you hit the subscribe button on Facebook or YouTube. And of course, those thumbs up always really helps us out. Rate and review if you guys are on the podcast. I thought that was interesting now that we now have a 3rd billboard. We're in one of the more bizarre seasons ever of the National Hockey League, where we haven't had a coach fired, yet we've had 2 billboard campaigns to eliminate a general manager and an owner. It's just such a freakishly bizarre year in the National Hockey League this year. It's like unlike anything I've ever seen before. Greg, Ottawa to Quebec City. Bring back the Nordiques. Ottawa is a joke. So bad of a team, says Aaron. I agree with you here. By the way, I am not a thoughts and prayers guy. I don't say that. I don't say it on my radio show. I'm not going to say it here. But I was really, really sad to hear the passing of Erik Carlson's son. I have 2 kids of my own. It's unimaginable to me. I know the Stalls went through something similar recently with their baby, and I know Melinda and Eric were super excited to be pregnant, and for them to carry all this way really, really sucks. And I want to just throw my condolences out into the universe. I'm under no disillusion that Erik Carlson watches the Hockey Talk Show, but I want to throw some good thoughts out to them. I had friends of mine very close to me that lost their baby very close to just before she was born. And Diana Hope, and it's a tough process to go through. So I really, really feel for Eric. The guy has had an unbelievable crummy year. I mean, hockey all aside, there's nothing like losing a baby. I mean, that's crazy. But I mean, to lose a baby after the year he's had professionally, that's really, really tough. I really, really feel for that cat, and I got good thoughts with him, and hopefully next year is a better year for him altogether. Golden Knights, Louis, if Carlson leaves Ottawa, the city closes up shop and the city disappears. You know what's interesting about this? I mean, it's slightly different because Carlson's got a year left, but same deal goes for the Islanders. If Tavares walks, I love Matthew Barzal more than anybody, more than his parents love him. I do. I honestly do. But it's the same thing for the Islanders. If they lose Tavares, thank you. You don't have to write God bless you, but I would appreciate it. This is what happens when you do a live show. If the Islanders lose Tavares, I mean, just as devastating. Ottawa might be more devastating, but we have a year left. until we lose that. Connor, watching from Brampton, Ontario, Canada. Welcome aboard, bud. Comment anything you want to talk about. We want to talk about the Blackhawks right now, though. We want to definitely talk about the Blackhawks. Juan, I'm sorry, we're not going to grab calls on this one because we're running through a lot of stuff here, but we do take calls on the Hockey Talk Show. We will be taking calls, but I didn't open up the phones just yet, but we will for sure. But I'm sorry, not on this episode. But anything you want to talk about, throw it in the comments below for sure. Unless it's really good, unless you want to scrap, then I'll open up the phones for you. But let's get over to the Chicago Blackhawks, as I do need to wrap up here, and I want to make sure that we get to this. Thanks, Daniel. We have a really rare scenario with the Blackhawks this year. It's not, I mean, for a long time, some people may not even remember when the Blackhawks were bad. I remember it. They were bad for a really long time. But for a long time since, they've been really good. I mean, they were bad when they drafted Taine and Caves. Did I say Taine and Caves? Kane and Taves. Taine was good. They never really got him to develop, but Taine would have been unbelievable. Super player. Super player. But they built this unbelievable, by all means, dynasty. I mean, 3 cups in 6 years. The only thing that can take away from that is if the Pittsburgh Penguins do a three-peat. That's the only thing. For all intents and purposes, everybody thought that it was impossible. I mean, look how difficult it is to just repeat. So what the Blackhawks were able to do, winning 3 cups in 6 years, I mean, that was tremendous. And they were dominant. But look at where they are now. They're in a tough spot. Gregory, that's what happens when you pay for what happened in the past. Taine was a bust. Taine was a bust. The Caves, though, still a chance he makes it. I wondered, and I've been saying this, and I've been making the excuse for the Blackhawks for the last couple of years. And that's the price you pay for, glory. Like, this is what it is now. And now we're kind of seeing maybe that's not true. Because if you look at Pittsburgh has done it a little bit smarter than the Blackhawks did. Now, granted, Pittsburgh has had one essential CBA to work with. The Blackhawks team has been dominant through 2 CBAs. Like, they've really had a couple of things to adjust to. Hosa's deal, that was old school CBA. That was old school new CBA. These deals that Pittsburgh is in is all new school new CBA. So it has been a little bit of a difference. Whereas Pittsburgh, I don't necessarily see them being in cap trouble long term. They've really managed things fairly well. They've committed to 2 players like Chicago has, but their supporting cast commitments seem to have been just a little bit better. I am against my judgment because Louis is asking me going to open up the phones for some comments. 631-438-1768 if you want to get in on the Hockey Talk Show. That's 631-438 Curry Yager if you want to get in on the program here. I just think that the excuses that I was making for Chicago have been voided out by the Pittsburgh Penguins because Pittsburgh has just done it a smidge smarter. A smidge smarter. That being said, what is it going to take? I asked the question in the graphic, that we have here. By the way, we got these things now. I don't know. Do we want to use this? This to me feels a little too TV-ish to me. I don't know if I really like this, but it kind of helps you guys know what we're talking about at that moment. I don't know if I want to do this necessarily. I don't know. You let me know what you think about these things. These are a little tickle the back here a little bit. I don't know how I feel about this. This show was not designed to be on television. This was designed to be direct through the internet. We don't want to be on TV. We want to be on the internet. I don't know about this. But anyway, I'm starting to think now that we don't really need to make these excuses for the Hawks anymore because of what Pittsburgh is doing. But you look at the Blackhawks, and my question is this just paying the price of the previous couple of years, or is there a bigger problem with the Chicago Blackhawks? That's my question. That's what I'd want to get some answers on. I'd love to know your opinions on those facts, on that question alone. Is this the price of doing business like we all kind of thought, or is this more of a situation where, actually there's something wrong? The chemistry's off. The players are not right. The coaching's bad. The injuries are too much to overcome. You know what I mean? Like, where are you at with this? Because I've been bouncing back and forth with this a little bit in my head. You look at the Blackhawks history the last couple of years. First round bow out against the Blues. Then they get swept by Nashville. This year they missed the playoffs. That's 3 pretty dismal years in a row. What's going to fix the Blackhawks moving forward? Now, I don't think that firing the coach is it. And if you go back to our episode on the NHL player poll, you'll see that Joel Quenneville is the most popular guy in coaching right now. Every player in the league wants to play for him. So I don't think that coaching is the issue. In fact, I think that Joel Quenneville will have his say on where and what he wants to do once the season is over. If he wants to leave, I think he'll leave. I don't think that the Blackhawks are in control in their coaching situation, is what I'm saying. I think it's Joel Quenneville's call, and rightfully so. He is one of the great coaches in the National Hockey League. I'm not a fan of firing coaches, especially good ones. I came to Alain Vigneault's defense earlier in this season when I thought he was going to get fired, and I said it then, and I said it now. The problem with the Rangers were the players, not the coach. Don't fire a good coach because you need to get the media off your back, or you're trying to impress the fans for a time, because that little burst of positivity doesn't get you that far. So I think that Quenneville will have his say. But I think that you definitely need to make a move here. And I just don't know if the Blackhawks are going to have much options as far as that goes. They are super up against the cap. I mean, they're so far up against the cap, it's not even funny. Let's bring up capfriendly.com, who does a phenomenal job on this one here. Their current cap space today is $4.7 million. I believe that's because of some injury money. They are very, very high up against the cap, $77 million or so. The good thing is they do have a fairly decent amount of draft picks. They have 2 firsts coming up this year, no second, but 2 thirds, a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th. So they have the right number of picks. You want 7 picks. It'd be great to have more first round picks, of course, but you want 7 picks. If they get mixed up around and a little bit here and there, it doesn't really make a difference. But let's take a look at their cap-friendly status here. Let's bring this page up for you guys so you can get a look at it. And we'll leave it here on the conversation for this evening. You've got $21 million tied up in 2 players. I love Jonathan Toews, and I think he's perhaps maybe the greatest captain in the league right now, sans Sidney Crosby. I mean, it's hard to argue he's better than Crosby. But as far as leaders go, one of the best. Lead by example kind of guy, right? Follow me, do as I do, not as I say. He doesn't say much. He's a great captain. I think he's just played a ton of hockey, and I think he is battered to hell. We saw and we showed the fight that he did the other night. It was just awful. It was just looking at a frustrated man who doesn't really know what to do anymore. I don't know if moving away from him is the right move, but I think it makes a lot of sense to trade Jonathan Toews because offensively, he hasn't really been there. And to trade Kane, that's rough. Those are a lot of points to make up. Saad would be the move, but for some reason, they love Brandon Saad in Chicago. Love him. Traded to get him back, right? That turned out to be not so great of a move for the Chicago Blackhawks. That was a misstep for management, for Stan Bowman. Artem Anisimov is not the guy for me. I don't like his game that much, and he's at $4.5 million. Anthony Duclair at 1.2, I think, was a great gamble for this season. But then you look, I want you to notice something too here. Take a look at this. Take a look at the way this team is built. And Pittsburgh's not that far off, but it's just slightly different. All the money's right here. I mean, look at this. In 4 players, you've got $31 million locked up in 4 players. $31 million in 4 players. That's crazy. And then you got another 14, 15 million locked up on your back end amongst 3 players. I mean, these are insane numbers. Look at all the lack of millions right here. I mean, on the bottom end of their lineups. To me, this is why they're having trouble. Now, you had to give the Toews Kane deal. You had to give the Seabrook Keith deal. I don't know why I keep combining these guys together. It's been a long day. Been up since 4:30. Anyway, you had to give these deals. But at this point, you got to get away from them. You've got to get away from them at some point. And if it means trading Jonathan Toews, honestly, that would be the last thing on my list would be trading Patrick Kane. The thing right before that would be trading Jonathan Toews. I would try everything else before that. I think you keep Kane and Toews as best you can, but you got to find somebody to bite on Seabrook. And I don't know who is going to with all those years left. And take a look at this little thing right over here. See this? That's a no movement clause. That's a problem. I give Stan Bowman a ton of credit, and I don't think that he should lose his job. My honest feeling on this is that Stan, Joel, Toews, I would give this team 1 more year. I know that sounds crazy, but change like this does not happen overnight. It just does not. And Joe, welcome into the show. Joe coming into the show makes a good point. Toews has a no movement clause. Like, everybody has a no movement clause on this team. Kane, Toews, Artem Anisimov. The fact that Artem Anisimov has a no move clause is disgusting. He's not worthy of such things. He deserves it. If he was able to negotiate it and get it, he deserves it. But I would have never given Artem Anisimov a no movement clause. That's ridiculous. Seabrook has a no movement. Keith has a no movement. Crawford has a no movement. Crawford had a bad year this year, but that is why I would give this team 1 more season. Just 1 more. See if Crawford can turn it around. See if Toews can pick up his scoring touch a little bit more. You got to make some shuffles. You know, is DeBrincat your guy? I would think so. I like his game so far. It's very encouraging. You got to have that youth in there. You got to bring those guys up. Thomas Jurko, I think, could be good. Or is it Jurko? I'm not sure. I think Duclair has a lot of potential. I don't think it's really popped there for him either. But these guys, you got to give them time. But I think you give this team 1 more year before you make any drastic maneuvers. I would shuffle those contracts that you could. I'd figure out something. I don't know if Schmaltz is my guy. Kampf, Patrick Sharp. I think he's at the end of his rope now. That clearly didn't work. He's the UFA, so that's an easy one to move on from. Connor Murphy seems to be a great young defenseman. What else do you have there with Osterley and Gustafsson? You got to kind of wait and see. Hard to replace a captain as good as Toews has been. Good luck keeping positivity in the locker room. Excellent point by John. That's why I'm saying, to me, out of the 2, between Kane and Toews, Toews goes. But again, if I'm restructuring this team, if they fire Stan Bowman and hire Anthony from the Hockey Talk Show, the last thing I do is trade Patrick Kane. The second to last thing I do is trade Jonathan Toews. I try and do everything else. The problem is you got to trade these to other teams with general managers who have brains, some of them. And are they going to want, they're going to want Jonathan Toews. They're going to want him. They're not going to want Brent Seabrook. Who's going to take Brent Seabrook in the position that he's in right now? You got to get really creative. to get rid of Brent Seabrook. Toews, people will take that phone call. People will take that phone call. Now, Joe brings up an excellent point here. Bowman is a fraud. He inherited that core. I felt the exact same way about this and felt that Dale Talon never got the credit he deserved, even though he did get a fair amount of credit. They did do a couple. I think they gave him the first ring, if I'm not mistaken, when he was with Florida. They gave him a ring, if I'm not mistaken, or they acknowledged him in some way, shape, or form. I do remember that. I'm totally with you. Until the Blackhawks win their third cup. That third cup. Now, granted, it was still Kane and Toews, and it was still the core that Talon put together. But that third cup was done with quite a bit of maneuvering from Stan Bowman, and I really feel like he earned that one. That was the one that he earned. You could argue with me about number 2. Number 1, he inherited. I don't think anybody can argue with that. But number 3, Stan Bowman earned that one. I was with Joe. I'm with you up until number 3. I felt the same way. I was saying the same thing. This guy's a fraud. This is Dale Talon's team. This is BS. And I never thought that Dale Talon should have been removed. I thought that was insane. But Stan Bowman got number 3. And that's why I think he deserves a little bit more time. I think Crawford, Quenneville, Toews, and Bowman have earned themselves one more season. But the question still remains, is this, is this the price to pay? The price you pay for winning? Or is this more of a conducive issue? First round exit against the Blues, followed by a sweep from Nashville, followed by you don't even make the playoffs. That is a downward trajectory. You've got to do something. You've got to do something. If it's me, I am trying like all hell to unload Brandon Saad and Artem Anisimov. That's my move. Let me free up $10 million in space. Let me get free of that. And let me start to bring in some third and fourth line guys that could make more of a difference. Let me go back up and get DeBrincat more involved. Let me see who else I got in my cupboard, who I could get in here under an entry-level contract, because there are quite a bit of those too with the Blackhawks. Right now they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 entry-level contracts on their roster right now. I would definitely do that, and I would see what I have here. I would also try my damned hardest to go over to Boston and pull away everybody in their front office that's not named Sweeney and see if I can't get a better drafting record. Because you look at those goddamn Boston Bruins, and they have drafted to perfection. They can't miss on a prospect. Who's this Donato kid that comes up the other day? Literally plucked this kid right out of Harvard. And he's lighting the scoreboard up. Played him for 20 minutes. Lit the scoreboard up. Boston can't. They can't do any wrong. The Boston Bruins. It's insanity. And that's where you need to be great if you're the Chicago Blackhawks. The Pittsburgh Penguins have done a fairly good amount of getting some youth in here. You know, whether it's through draft or trade, right? All the Gensels and the Shearys and all, wherever they've done it, the Blackhawks haven't done it. That's the difference. They've missed on some of those smaller moves, bottom 9 forwards, bottom 6 forwards, right? They've missed in those spots. Pittsburgh hasn't, and now we can see Boston definitely hasn't. So, that's what I would do if I was Chicago. I would alter that bottom level. I try and get out from under those 2 deals if you can, because Anisimov can be traded. There's some value there. Saad, I'm not so sure. He makes $6 million. That'll be a little tough, but you got to try and do something. You've got to try and do something. And a buyout maybe in your future, even if you're paying $3 million for the next 10 years to Brent Seabrook, you might have to do something. Something. We'll leave Joe with the final comment. It's a character issue on the Hawks. Look at the Pens, same cap issues, but they continue to win. Could be, although we'd all agree that Joe is a phenomenal captain, but that room has definitely had some issues. There have been a lot of personal issues in that room with wives and all other kinds of things. So if you don't know about that, Google it. I'm not going to go into those things. And Joel Quenneville hates young guys. He does. That's why I don't know if they're going to launch into some sort of a rebuild on the fly if Quenneville's going to want to stick around. I just don't know, because if he leaves, you take a look, he'll have his pick of any job in the league. Granted, I think Detroit's going through a build, but he can take over Detroit if he wants. He could take over the Islanders tomorrow if he needed to. You know, you look at any of the teams, maybe not San Jose, because I don't know if they'll move away from their coach, but maybe they would if they knew that Quenneville was around. The Caps, like any of these teams that are right there and that have been knocking and are, you know, just need that little put, like that's where Quenneville is going to want to go. The Philadelphia Flyers, you know, the Florida Panthers. History with Dale Talon. Who knows? Who knows? He'll have his pick of the litter. That's for damn sure. I could keep going for another 4 hours, but I can't because I got other stuff to do. So thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate it as always. Make sure you're subscribed to the channels, especially on YouTube. Want to get those numbers up a little bit. And make sure you guys are sharing the Hockey Talk Show. Let your friends know who love hockey that we're here talking hockey live every night. Maybe not always with one of these little thingies here. I don't know if I really love this all that much. We tried it tonight. We'll see what happens. Let me know in the comments below if you like that sort of a thing. I don't know. I don't like kicking it old school like that. That's just me. This is not a TV show. It's a web show. And we will see you guys tomorrow night. Oh, I didn't tell you who I think the next general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes is going to be. Should we put that on record now, or should we tease that for the next show? Should I tease it? Adam says no sign. I'm going to tease it. This will be my second or third time I've dragged this out. Maybe I'll say it just to have it on the record. Joe Nieuwendyk, I think, becomes the next general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes. He's tight with Dundon. He's already a special counsel advisory thing. He was a general manager, unsuccessfully, of Dallas. He's in his year. He's got his year. The job is his if he wants it. As you can see, everybody else keeps pulling their name out of the hat. I'm surprised the Elliot Friedmans and the Bob McKenzies of the world don't have more on this. And that's not a shot at them. I love them. They're insiders. They break news. We don't. We talk hockey. We don't break news. This is not a breaking news scenario. I didn't hear this from anybody. That's not what I do here. We talk, we comment, we converse. We do also predict. And my prediction is that Joe Nieuwendyk will be the next general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, who, by the way, were very poorly represented at the general manager meetings because Don Waddell, former GM of the Hawks, now president of the Hurricanes, was down there, but had to go back to Carolina to handle some issues. So Carolina didn't get to get their votes in per se, or really get involved in a lot of the conversations that they were having at those general managers meetings because of their new owner. So take that to the bank. Joe Nieuwendyk, I could completely be wrong about that, but that's just my feeling. I think he was part of the reason why Ron Francis was fired to begin with, because he's in the ear of the owner. And I think eventually he's going to wind up being the general manager, or if not, the president of hockey operations in some way, shape, or form, coming in with a general manager with Ron Francis or whatever. I don't know how they're going to structure it, but I think Joe Nieuwendyk is so much more involved in the Hurricanes next season. And by next season, I mean this offseason. Have a great night, guys. Share our videos around Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Certainly appreciated. Make sure everybody's subscribed up, and we'll see you guys on